computer. Hi, everybody. This is Joni from Paperback Exchange Bookstore, 6412 Ridge Road in lovely Port Richey, Florida, Pasco County. You might have seen us on PD Live or something to that effect. But we're here in wonderful North Tampa Bay. And today we have the honor of interviewing local author and New Floridian, Mr. Robert A. Auman. I'm sorry, William D. Auman. I knew I was going to screw that up. I knew a Robert Auman.
I have aliases.
Sorry about that. Welcome, and we're glad you're here with us.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Joan. I appreciate it.
And Bill has written A Tree, If Trees Could Testify. And you're semi-retired or fully retired attorney now?
I don't know how easy it's going to be to fully retire, because I still enjoy writing, not just this way, but I do appellate work now. I did trial work for roughly 30 years. I've tried 10 capital murders, everything in between, criminal defense work. And about 6 years ago, I decided I want to get out of the courtroom. I want to focus on doing post-conviction work and appellate work together with that, which keeps me involved, but I'm not tied to that courtroom every day anymore, which is nice, even though I miss trying cases.
So this is a fictional account,
yes,
of a trial that you worked on.
It is a case that I had back in 2001, based on a case that I had back in 2001, right? Because I did change the names. I felt like I needed to. The storyline of the book tracks exactly how the case went, pretty much from start to finish. I don't want to give away the ending, but there's a lot of twists and turns, which really made for a good story.
And our
you want me to kind of give you
fans will enjoy this as much?
Yes, I would say so, because it is based on the true account of a pretty tragic murder that occurred in a small community near Asheville, North Carolina, which is where I am most of the year. I'm in your neck of the woods as much as I can in the cold weather.
We're very familiar with the Asheville area. We have a sister up there in Hot Springs, so
there you go.
Absolutely
good.
So this, would you call this, now we recently heard a term that they used for Richard Kaismar's book. This isn't the book, but he wrote one called Chasing the Boogeyman, and it was a memoir about him going back to his hometown. But there was also like a serial killer unsolved story in there. They called it metafiction.
Metafiction.
Yeah.
That's a title I'm not quite familiar with.
I'm not either. Yeah. I'm wondering if something like this, like what you did, would be considered metafiction too. We'll have to research that.
Arguably, but it is based on the true story, and it was a founding family, pretty much, of the community that's up here, been here forever. I think they got land grants of over 8,000 acres back in the day, and basically, as time went by, the patriarch and matriarch were a brother and sister who were living together. They didn't trust banks. They lived through the Depression, and so they hid money in their mattress. They had a treasure chest full of antique coins and things that had been handed down through generations. And a lot of people knew about that. They had a small Social Security related bank account so they could cash their checks, but that was really it. And unfortunately, back in 1983, they were murdered. And for 18 years, it was a cold case. In 2001, a person was contacted. Well, the sheriff was actually contacted by an individual who was in custody in Ohio and said, if you can help me out, then I can help you out with, I know you felt like I've been involved in this case forever, but I can tell you who really knows about it. And so the sheriff did help him out. And this person told a story that was believed enough to arrest my client. And I lived in Madison County where this case occurred, although I practiced primarily in Asheville. That's where my office was, which isn't far away, maybe 20 miles. So the judge knew that I had done 10 death penalty trials, and this was thought going to be at least potentially a capital case, death penalty involved. And so he had the clerk call me and said, would you take this on an appointed basis? And I really waffled a little bit because I knew it was going to be very time consuming, but Yeah, it basically came down to why not? I will. And I'm glad I did, because it was one of the most interesting murder cases that I've ever handled. And I've handled over 70 murder cases in my career. So in various forms, different times. We had a biker gang that was suspected in the beginning. There was an organized crime ring operating out of Tennessee that reportedly fenced some of the property that was stolen from the house. There were relatives that were looked at as potential suspects because some had been disinherited, and the location of the trunk was key, and only certain people knew where that was. So it really had a whole lot of 18 years worth of investigation before the charges actually happened.
Interesting. So obviously, everybody is obsessed at this point, to the point of actually harming themselves with this true crime stuff. Are you familiar with the story of Michelle McNamara's book, I'll Be Gone in the Dark, where she picked up the Golden Gate Killer case and became obsessed with it and died in the middle of writing about it? HBO special. There's some other folks that are becoming obsessed with these cold cases.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is interesting to write about. I mean, being a capital attorney and trying murder cases, you've got material for probably the rest of your life.
Well, that's what people tell me. I hear that I need to write more books about my cases, but what I respond in kind is, you really don't want to hear about those things. They're very depressing. You would rather write
it the way you thought it should end, right?
Yeah. And I wish I could have created a different ending for this book, but I'm not going to give away the ending. It was a very interesting twist and turn investigatory situation. But the original.
Obviously, your muse is the truth, then, right?
Yeah, I would say it's a very true account, even though the names were changed.
So what inspired you? Obviously, the story is interesting. You worked on it for a very long time. What's going to be your next inspiration? What's your next book going to be about?
Well, I wrote my first book back in 2010. It was called Pioneer Paddling Colonial Carolina, because my wife and I are avid kayakers, and I'm a history buff, and I paddle every place I can find some type of anywhere from Native American to Revolutionary War to even some Civil War history associated with where I'm going on my boat. And so I make little entries. And my first book was focused on North Carolina, but I think my next project is going to be expanding that to include Florida and to include South Carolina, and some excursions that I've done in Virginia and in Tennessee and in Georgia.
I've got your.
It's gonna be a lot of work.
Got your first book up here, The Pioneer Paddling Colonial Carolina.
Right.
So you took off out onto the water. You're doing canoe rides or kayaks, or?
Pretty much canoe and kayak, and we did a lot with our children back in the day. Of course, they're adults now, and I really did enjoy living that book. I did not necessarily enjoy writing it as much, because it was more like doing a research report than it was writing a novel. So it was more fun to write the novel, but it was more fun to live the canoe book, because that murder case was not a lot of fun there from the beginning. I mean, the original title was going to be Justice Denied. And there was a traditional publisher that offered me a contract out of London under that title. But I started thinking about, there was no justice for anybody in this case. So for my client, for the victims, for anyone, is how it ultimately turns out. And I ended up submitting to a total of 21. You asked me earlier about, I think, before we got started, about my publisher. I submitted to a total of 21 publishers. 19 were traditional publishers. I got 18 rejections. And then I submitted to 2 hybrid publishers. I was carefully selected those out of a number of those, because there's so many online that, the self-publishing world is out there. The in-between, which is the hybrid, where you basically have a contract for what they're going to do and what you're supposed to do, and then the traditional. And I got rejected by one hybrid publisher, but Book Locker was very interested. And of course, they claim they reject 90% of what they get. I don't know, but they've been in business a long time. And they have, I think, published roughly 23,000 books over the many years that they've been out there.
And they're right here in St. Pete. So
that's where they are.
We've got the information up here on the page. We've always got authors, local authors, people that are just getting started. What would be your best advice? Just, send it out to everybody you can and wait for the,
Well, I think I would
yeses
be a
and nos
little
to
more.
come back.
I think I would be a little more selective than that. The best advice, which was given to me by the writer in residence at UNC Asheville, where I taught as an adjunct professor for a number of years, would be to get an agent to take your case, so to speak, kind of like an attorney takes a criminal case or other case. And that's probably the best way to go for the most exposure. You're not going to get as big of a profit share if you go that route, but you're going to probably land on the shelves of Barnes and Noble if that's where you want to be. You're in the industry, and I mean, the brick and mortar stores are not what they were 10 years ago. I mean, a lot of books are sold online now. And I know you have mine online.
We're constantly making changes all the time.
Right. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, my advice would be to get as much information as you can and make an informed decision.
So as far as what made you decide to write about that, obviously the case, what kind of a writing platform did you use?
Well, it was more conversational. I have one favorite author named Ernest Hemingway, some people have heard about, and I try to kind of mimic the way he writes his books. It's not Thomas Wolfe level English language. It's not Jack Kerouac level English language, and I try to eliminate a lot of legalese, but I also explained some of the legalities for the layperson so they could understand what it was I was saying. For example, if there was a court proceeding coming up, the type of hearing and why those happen or when those happen, those type of things. So I tried to make it as reader friendly as I could, and I think a lot of people have agreed that it is. I mean, I've gotten good response, and an audiobook is coming out soon. I can't say exactly when, but Stone Table Media out of Black Mountain, North Carolina, which also did Ruth Graham's book, Billy Graham's wife, is doing it, and I've already listened to part of it, but it's not quite complete yet.
So we've got a trailer here that I've got up.
That was done by my publisher. And that's the house, the real house.
Interesting. Well, this is something that somebody could do, with a meme program too, just a local author. These are great. They're simple, they're to the point.
And 45 seconds.
Gets the cover done. And that's really one of the important things these days, right, is the fact that folks' attention span is so small. We're so short.
There you go.
You gotta get them, you gotta get them.
I just spent a lot of time with my 2.5-year-old granddaughter, so I can relate to the attention span issue really well right now.
So
we had a great
project. Have you got anything in the works? Are you working on anything? You got any queries put together?
Well, I'm always working on this next book, but since I'm still practicing to some extent, I'm not able to devote as much time to it as I would like to. But it will eventually be out there, and we'll see how it goes.
So you can find Bill's book here at the Paperback Exchange. You can find it in Amazon. Where else? What other platforms do you have it up for sale?
It's on Google Play. If you just Google either my name, which is, if you Google William probably instead of Bill, you'll find more about me than you want to know. But you'll find a lot about the book, and it's out there in places I didn't even know it was. So I think 20-some thousand retail outlets, but it is in some stores, particularly in North Carolina. In Florida, I think you may be the only store that has it right now.
Well, I'm sure you probably have copies of it at Malprops in Asheville. We're very
well, yes, Malprops has it in Asheville. There's Quail Ridge in Raleigh, Park Road in Charlotte, Thornwell and Morganton. There are a few others. I can't remember them all, but again, it's Amazon. It seems to be selling quite a few. I've been pleased. It's done really well through them and some of the other online outlets.
Great. Well, thank you so much today for joining us, Bill. And we will look forward to your next book when it comes out in your travels back and forth between North Carolina and Florida. Thank you for coming by the shop and introducing yourself to us and providing us with this great book. We appreciate it.
Well, you've got a great shop. You got a great thing going, and I really appreciate your time and putting this on, and thank you for having me.
Well, thank you very much. And we would ask everybody to join with questions if you would like. We'll be watching this at 7 o'clock when it premieres tonight. But we'll also be checking in every once in a while to see if anybody's got any questions. And I will relay those to Bill since he's not on Facebook. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Bill, for joining us today. And sleep less, read more, and please, everybody, wash your hands.